Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. So in today's video I have a really good beginner friendly crochet tutorial for you. It is this gorgeous spring themed lavender basket. Perfect to store pretty much anything in. I always store like small balls of yarn, crochet hooks, perfumes, like makeup products, anything you want. And it's a really nice addition to add to a room. It's very eye-catching. In this tutorial I'm going to be going in depth into making like a slip knot, a single crochet, chaining, pretty much all the basic stitches. So if you're already familiar with them, then this project is going to be super easy for you. But if you're still unfamiliar with crocheting the basics, then I'm going to be going through that. So yeah, I hope you all enjoy this tutorial and let's get into it. Okay, so for this project I'm going to be using a 3.5mm hook. And this is purely just because I'm going to be doubling up my yarn, but because my tension is quite loose, I found that this is the perfect hook size for me to use based on my tension. If you double up your yarn and you're finding that the 3.5mm hook is making it curl, then you might want to move up to maybe a 4 or 4.5mm hook. But I just like my stitches to be as neat as possible, and with a looser tension, sometimes that means I have to size down a hook. So I'm going to be using this one. I'm also going to be using some scissors, and I'm also going to be using a stitch marker. For my yarn, I'm going to be using, for the main colour, I'm going to be using this cream yarn, and this is the Women's Institute, I believe it's the double knit yarn. This is just the cream. I got this from Hobbycraft, and I'm going to be doubling up on this yarn. So what I mean by that is I'm finding the yarn piece that comes out from the inside, and then there's also one that wraps around the outside, so I'm using both of those strings, and then I'll be doubling up on my hook with that. If you find that a little bit more difficult, then you could always buy two or use two skeins, and then just take the tail from the outside and then use them together, and then you would just have two balls on the go rather than one. I'm using 100 grams, and this is how much I had left over after making a basket, so just keep that in mind, that you probably would be okay with maybe like 50 grams as well. Then for my secondary colours, I've got baby pink, lilac, and I've got a mint green colour, and this is all double knit, and I'm not going to be doubling up on these colours, I'm just using the tails as they are. The baby pink yarn and the lilac yarn are also the Women's Institute, and this is just, I can't remember the brand, but this is just a normal double knit mint green yarn, so any double knit will work fine. And I'm still using the 3.5mm hook for all of these. Okay, so we're going to be starting with the main part of the basket, and that is going to be the base. So here's what the base looks like. We're basically just going to be working on this flat circle section. So we are going to start off with this slip knot. So I'm taking both of my strands of yarn, holding them together, and the way that I like to make a slip knot is, or the easiest way I find to remember, is to make a number 6 with your yarn. So you want to fold over the short piece with the long piece. So the short piece is your tail end here, the long piece is the rest of it. Fold them together and across, sort of cross them over into a number 6 shape, like that. And then you want to take the long piece and push it through that hole out to the other side, so we're pushing it through. And then we're going to grab the piece that we just pulled through, and then we tug on the short end and the long end, and we kind of hold it and pull it so that it makes this big loop, and that is a slip knot. You want to place the slip knot on the hook, and then we can just pull both of these strands to make it fit on the hook, like that. Okay, so now that we have our slip knot, we're now going to be making a chain of 4. So to make a chain, we're going to wrap the long part, the long tail, anti-clockwise around the hook. So we're wrapping it around like that, and then we're going to pull this top tail that we've wrapped around down through our slip knot. So we're pulling it through that loop, and that is a chain 1. Now we're going to wrap the yarn around again and pull down again, pull down that loop, and that's a chain 2 because we've now got 2 of these. Do it again, wrap it around, and then pull down. And now we've got 3 chains, yarn over and pull down, and now we have 4 chains. Okay, so now we have 4 chains. We want to join the kind of row together to make a circle, and then we are going to crochet into the circle. So what we do is we do a slip stitch into that very first chain that we made, or also known as the 4th chain from the hook. So we count the number of chains away from the hook. So here is our hook. We have 1, 2, 3, and then 4, and this is the 4th chain from the hook. So I'm going to insert my hook into that 4th chain. So I'm just picking up the top loop of the V like that, and then I'm going to make a slip stitch. So for the slip stitch, I'm going to yarn over, so I'm wrapping the yarn over the hook like this, just like we did anti-clockwise over the hook, and then I'm pulling my yarn down through both loops at the same time. So I'm going to pull through the first loop like that, and then I'm going to pull through the second loop, and that is a slip stitch. So now we've kind of created this small circle, and this is what we're going to be crocheting into. So this is going to be what we call round 1. So this is the first round, or the first lot of stitches that we make, which creates our first round. So we're going to be making 8 single crochets into our ring, and the ring is going to be this gap right here in the middle. So we're actually going to be inserting our hook into the gap. So pull the yarn apart to create that gap, and I'm going to make 8 single crochets. So for a single crochet, I'm going to insert my hook, yarn over as normal, pull through that actual like center circle that we just inserted the hook into, pull through there. Now you should have 2 loops on the hook. And now we're going to yarn over again, and then we're going to pull down through both of those loops. So insert the hook again into the ring, yarn over, pull through, yarn over again, and then pull through both loops like that. So now we have 2 single crochets. So I'm going to continue that until I have 8 single crochets in total. So just to remind you again, insert your hook into the ring, yarn over and pull through, yarn over again, and then pull through both loops. Okay, so I'm going to do that until I have 8 single crochets. So far I have 3, so I'm going to do 5 more. So now I have 8 single crochets. I'm going to now place my stitch marker into that 8th one, and you want to place your stitch marker actually slotting it through those 2 V's, or sorry, not the 2 V's, but the 2 loops of each V. So just that top V of that 8th single crochet that we made, and that's just going to help mark where the last stitch is. So now you're just going to want to pull tight on the short tail to help close the ring. And now what we're going to do is start our next row, which is round 2. So for round 2, we're also going to include the tail in, just to help weave it in, but you don't have to. If you find it a little bit tricky, you could just sew this in later on, or weave it in with your hook, whatever you want. But I just think it's easier when you crochet it into the work, because you don't have to do any extra work after. For round 2, we're now going to be making 2 single crochets into each stitch. So where we were doing in the previous row, we just did 1 into the ring. We're now going to be doing 2 single crochets, but we're now working into these V's, and this is what we'll be working into now for the rest of the project, is we're working into these V's, not into the ring. So here is my first single crochet. You can see it's right here, and if you're not sure where you're meant to start, count back from your stitch where the stitch marker is, 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. So this is the first one. So we insert our hook into that first V, and you're pushing the hook right through that V, and then I'm going to wrap the tail over the hook, because this is how you include it into the work. So I'm wrapping the tail over, and then I'm going to make my single crochet as normal. So I've inserted the hook, I'm going to yarn over and pull through, 2 loops on the hook, and then I'm going to yarn over and pull through 2 again. So that's 1 single crochet, but for round 2 we're doing 2 single crochets in each stitch. So I'm going to insert my hook again into that same stitch, yarn over and pull through, and then yarn over and pull through 2 loops again. So now we have 2 single crochets in that stitch. So what we're doing is 2 single crochets per stitch, which means that we're doubling the amount of stitches in our round, which moves our number up to 16 stitches by the end of the round. So I'm going into my next stitch, still wrapping that tail over. I'm going to yarn over and pull through, and then yarn over and pull through 2 loops. And then again in the same stitch, insert the hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through 2 loops. So now I'm going to just do 2 single crochets into each stitch until I reach the stitch marker. So when you get to the stitch marker, you want to do your 2 single crochets, and then you will put your stitch marker back into that second single crochet. Okay, so I've just done my last single crochet. Now I'm going to replace the stitch marker back into the very last one that I made. And you'll notice if you count back, you will have 16 stitches now in your round. So our sequence for this basket will mean that every round we make 8 more stitches than the previous round. So in the next round we will have 24 stitches, in the 4th round we will have 32 stitches, and so on, so it will go up by 8. So for round 3, I am now going to be doing 1 single crochet into the first stitch, and then 2 single crochets into the second stitch, and then we will be repeating that sequence. So it will go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 all the way around. By the end of the round you'll have 24 stitches. So I'm going into my next stitch, or my first stitch of the round, and making a single crochet as normal. So that's just 1, and then into the second stitch I'm going to make 2 single crochets. So that's 1, and that's 2. And then I'll repeat the sequence, so 1 in the next stitch, and 2 in the following stitch. 1 in the next stitch, and 2 in the following stitch. Okay, so I'll be repeating that sequence all the way around, and then by the end of the round I will have 24 stitches. And then when I get to the end of the round, I'll just replace the stitch marker into that very last stitch that I made. Okay, so now I have finished round 3. Now I'm moving on to round 4. So round 4 is going to be a sequence of 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2 all the way around. So that means 1 single crochet into the first stitch, 1 single crochet into the second stitch, and 2 single crochets into the third stitch. Okay, so 1 single crochet into the next stitch, 1 single crochet into the next stitch, and then 2 single crochets into the third stitch. Okay, so when you get to the end of the round you will have 32 stitches, and hopefully now you can see the sequence. So for round 5 it will be 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2 all the way around, bringing you up to 40 stitches. And then for round 6 it will be 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, so 4 single crochets and then 2 single crochets into the next stitch. And then for round 7 it will be 5 single crochets and then an increase into the next stitch, so 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2 all the way around. So once you have finished round 7 you will have 56 stitches. So I'm going to continue the sequence, and I'll have it up on screen as well for you to follow until I reach round 7. So once I finish round 7 I will come back and I will show you the next round. Okay, so I have just finished round 7 and now I'm going to complete my last increase round, which is round 8, and round 8 is just going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 single crochets and then an increase into the 7th, so just following the same kind of sequence. So into the next stitch, 1 single crochet, into the next, 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 1 single crochet, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then into the 7th stitch, 2 single crochets, and then just repeat that sequence all the way around. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then into the 7th, 2 single crochets. So I'm just going to complete that all the way around as normal and then replace the stitch marker once I reach the end, and then I'll meet you back for round 9. Okay, so I've just finished my 8th round and now we're going to move on to round 9. Now round 9 is going to be the round that helps the basket kind of now go upwards instead of being a flat base. The next round is going to help lift the sides up to create more of a curve. So for round 9 we're going to be making slip stitches and we're going to be making them in the back loop. So when I'm talking about the back loop, I mean for each V you will have the front loop, which is like the kind of one facing you, and then there's the back loop, which is the furthest loop away from you. So when you look at it sort of side on, it's the left loop or the one furthest away from you. And we're going to be making slip stitches into this back loop. So I'm inserting my hook into that back loop, yarn over, pull through, and then we're pulling the top loop through the first loop here, like that, to make a slip stitch. And then I'm going into the next back loop, insert my hook, yarn over, and pull through, and then pull through the bottom loop. Again, insert my hook into the next back loop, yarn over, pull through, and then pull the first loop through the second. And I'm just going to continue that now all the way around. So there's no increases, we're simply just making slip stitches into each back loop. Okay, so now we are going to be working on the kind of top part, and so we're not focusing on the base anymore, we're now going to be crocheting up. So we're kind of working in a different direction. So rather than working around, we're actually going to be chaining up, and then we're going to be working up and down, up and down, up and down, all in that direction. For my next step, we're kind of working in rows now rather than rounds. I'm going to make a chain of 14. If you want to make the height of your basket longer, you can always do more chains if you want to, but I think 14 is a pretty good height. So I'm going to just chain 14, so I'm wrapping the yarn around anti-clockwise and then pulling down. Again, yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through. So that's now 3 chains. So that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 and 14. So now you can kind of see how high the side of the basket is going to be, or sorry, the height of the basket. If you want to make it longer, then you can do more chains. Okay, so now I'm just focusing on these chains for the time being, so just kind of try to ignore the base, and I'm going to make 1 single crochet into the second chain from the hook. So this is the first chain and this is the second chain, and I'm going to make a single crochet, and then into the next chain a single crochet, into the next chain single crochet, and I'm single crocheting down the chain, so that is 13 single crochets in total. So now I have done my 13 single crochets, as you can see here. I'm now going to kind of be attaching the chain to the actual basket. So we're going to be doing 2 slip stitches. So I'm finding my next stitch of the actual round of the basket, so round 9 it was. I'm going into that first slip stitch and I'm going to make another slip stitch into that stitch. So slip stitch, and then I'm going to make a slip stitch into the next stitch as well. So as you can see, that has kind of attached the chain to the actual basket. Okay, so that's kind of starting us off, and now we're going to be working on the next row. So I'm going to be turning the work around like this, and now we are going to be working into these front loops. So remember, in the previous round we've been working in the back loops. I'm now grabbing these front loops. So for the next row we're going to be skipping those 2 slip stitches that we just made, so completely skip them, and we're going to be doing what we call a yarn over slip stitch. So it's kind of like a hybrid between a single crochet and a slip stitch. So we're going to skip those slip stitches, and we're going to start off by yarning over our work. So yarn over the hook with the hook, insert the hook into the front loop of the next single crochet, so just picking up the front loop, and then we're going to yarn over again and pull through. So now we have 3 loops on the hook, and then we are going to pull our top loop through both of these 2 loops. So if you need to kind of pull this down, this middle one down, to make it easier, you can pull the first loop through these 2 loops. So I'm going through that middle one, and then I'm going through that bottom one like that, and that is a yarn over slip stitch. So I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook into the next front loop, yarn over again, pull through, 3 loops on the hook. I'm pulling my top loop through these 2 bottom loops. So that's the first and that's the second. Again, yarn over, insert the hook into that front loop, next front loop of the next single crochet, yarn over again and pull through, then pull through the first loop through these bottom 2 loops like that. So now I'm just going to continue this all the way across until I get to my very last stitch. So you're going to technically want to do 13 of these stitches. Okay, so I've just finished my second row, so that was the yarn over slip stitch row, and now I'm going to turn the work. So for row 3 I've turned the work, and now as you can see we are back at the kind of neater side of the work. So I'm going to be making my stitches into the back loop now. I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook into that back loop, yarn over and pull through, 3 loops on the hook, and then I'm pulling first loop through all 3, through the bottom 2 I mean. Again, yarn over, insert the hook into that back loop, yarn over and pull through, 3 loops on the hook, pull the first loop through those bottom 2, like that. So now I'm just repeating exactly what I did in the previous row all the way across. This time I'm working in the back loop instead of the front loop. And then when I get to the end of the row, so that's 13 of those stitches, I will then make 1 slip stitch into the next stitch on the kind of circle part, and then 1 slip stitch into the next stitch of the circle part, so that's 2 slip stitches there. So I've just reached the kind of 13th stitch, and now I'm going to make my 2 slip stitches. So I'm going through both loops of that next stitch to make a slip stitch, and then again insert my hook, yarn over and pull through, and then pull through, so that's 2 slip stitches. So that was the end of row 3, and now we're basically just going to be repeating row 2 and then row 3, and we're going to alternate, so row 2, row 3, row 2, row 3. So back to row 2, we turn the work, we skip those 2 slip stitches that we made, so skipping those, and I'm going to make my yarn over slip stitch into my next available stitch of the kind of row of 13 stitches. So skipping those 2 slip stitches, and I'm going into my next stitch, and I'm going into the front loop now. Remember, we are on the back of the work, so we're going into the front loop, making the yarn over slip stitch, into the next stitch, make your yarn over slip stitch into that front loop. You want to make your yarn over slip stitches into all the stitches across, that's 13 of those yarn over slip stitches. Okay, so I've just finished the end of technically the next row 2 that we've just done, and I'm going to turn the work and we're going to complete another row 3. So remember, now we're working in the back loop because we are on the neat side of the work, and I'm going to start off with 13 of those yarn over slip stitches in that back loop. Okay, and then when you reach the end of the row, you're going to just want to make 2 slip stitches into the next 2 stitches on your circle basket section. So just 2 slip stitches to complete the end of row 3. So now I'm just going to be alternating between row 2 and row 3. So I'm going to do that until my work goes all the way around and I reach my stitch marker, and then I'm going to come back and show you how we kind of attach the 2 seams together. Okay, so I've just finished my last row. I finished on technically a row 3, so I've done my last 2 slip stitches, and now I'm going to show you how we join the 2 sides together. So what you're going to do is you're going to kind of push the basket inside out to make it a little bit easier, and then we will be working kind of on the wrong side, and we're going to be crocheting along this edge, crocheting both panels together. So I'm just going to remove the stitch marker to make it a bit easier. So what we're going to do is we're going to skip those 2 slip stitches that we just did, and then we are going to insert the hook into the next sort of stitch and the next stitch on the opposite side. So this one right here. So as you can see, I've inserting my hook into both of those stitches, and then I'm just going to make a slip stitch. So I'm going to yarn over, I'm going to pull through both of those stitches, and then I'm going to pull through that final loop like that, and then I'm going to do that all the way across. So I'm going into the next stitch on the front panel and the next stitch on the back panel, and then making a slip stitch, and then again inserting my hook into the next stitch on the front panel and the next stitch on the back panel, and then making a slip stitch. And I'm just doing this all the way across until I get to the very last stitch. Okay, and then when you have done the final slip stitch, you're just going to want to chain 1, and then we're going to cut the yarn and fasten off. And then just pull that loop and tighten it, and then you can flip the work back onto the normal side. Okay, so this is what the basket should be looking like. We have this nice sort of knit looking stitch, and then this is the seam where we joined everything together, so it's nice and neat. Okay, so now we are going to be working on the green leaves. Okay, so for the green leaves, you're going to want to take your green yarn, and we're going to make a slip knot. So remember, make a number 6 with the yarn like this. So cross them over to make a number 6, and then with the long tail, you want to push it through that middle loop, and then just pull it. You're going to insert your hook into any section on the top edge of the basket, so it doesn't matter where, but just to make it easier I will just be going on sort of any loop on that seam that we just joined together. So I'll just grab kind of any top loop. You just want to insert your hook, grab a top loop like that, and then you're just going to pull your slip knot through that top loop you just inserted the hook into. So just pull that through like that, and then we're just going to chain 1 to attach it like that, so that way it's not going to come loose. Okay, so we're now going to be doing the leaves. So the leaves are going to be basically a sequence of 3 single crochets, and then we're going to make a kind of petal design. So I'm going to start off with 3 single crochets. So I'm making my first into that exact same spot that I just attached the yarn into. So that's 1 single crochet, and then into the next sort of space. It doesn't have to be accurate, just pick up the next few loops along the top of the basket and make another single crochet. So that's 2, and then again into the next space, and then again into the next space. That's 3. Okay, and then we're going to start the leaf section. So for the leaf section, you're just going to want to chain 1, and then you're going to pick up that back loop of that chain. So as you can see, here is the sort of V, and then you're going to kind of turn the chain to the back so that you can pick up that very small back loop right there. Insert your hook, and then you're going to make a slip stitch. So yarn over and then pull through both of those loops. Okay, and we're going to repeat that 2 more times. So chain 1, insert your hook into that back loop and make a slip stitch, and then chain 1 once more, insert your hook into that back loop and make a slip stitch like that. And then we are going to slip stitch back into sort of the actual basket part. So this part right here where we made our 3rd single crochet, we're going to make a slip stitch. Okay, and then that is the sequence. So we'll have 3 single crochets, we'll have our leaf section, and then we'll do another 3 single crochets and make another leaf. So I'm going to do that once more. I'm going to make a single crochet into the next space. So that's 1. Another single crochet into the next space. That's 2. And then another single crochet into that 3rd space. 3. And then we're going to make the leaves. So I'm going to chain 1. I'm going to slip stitch into that back loop. Ooh, just do that again. Like that. Chain 1 again. And slip stitch into that back loop. And then chain 1 again. And slip stitch into that back loop. Like that, and then we're going to slip stitch back into that space where we did that 3rd single crochet. So make a slip stitch like that. Okay, so I'm just going to complete that sequence all the way around. So it'll be 3 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, and then we will chain 1, slip stitch into the back loop, chain 1 again, slip stitch into the back loop, and then chain 1 once more and slip stitch into the back loop, and then you just want to slip stitch into that 3rd single crochet space that you made, and then repeat that sequence all the way around. So I'm going to continue making the sequence, and then I'm going to meet you back once I kind of get roughly back to the beginning again. Okay, so I've just finished the last petal. I did my 3 slip stitches, and then I've slip stitched back into the original single crochet that I made, and now I'm going to just join the kind of 2 sides together by making a slip stitch into that 1st single crochet that we made. So I'm going right into that 1st stitch, and I'm going to make a slip stitch, and that's just going to join everything together, and then I'm going to chain 1 and fasten off like that, and just pull that through. So this is what it should be looking like. You should have these nice little leaves, and what we're going to do now is we're going to make the lavender flowers, and the lavender flowers are going to be situated at every other leaf, and I like to alternate my colours, but you don't have to do that if you don't want to. You could do them in any order you wanted. And I'm going to make a slip knot, so same way that we've been making it. And I'm just going to start at the beginning where that seam is, just so that everyone is like at the same point. I'm going to insert my hook into the kind of middle leaf. So remember when we did 3 chains, you're going to want to find that top middle chain right there. So it's this top middle one right here. I'm going to insert my hook into that middle chain, and then I'm going to pull my pink slip knot through like that. Okay, so because I'm left-handed, I'm going to be tilting my work to this sort of side here and working down. If you're right-handed, you will be tilting work the other way and working down this way. So you're going to kind of want to figure out where exactly your leaf is and where it situates. So it situates kind of right near this V line of V's right here. So that's what I've decided I'm going to be working into. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that very first V, and I'm grabbing the right loop, because again I'm working this way, so I'm going to be working across these top loops. If you're right-handed, you'll be grabbing that left loop. And I'm going to just start with a single crochet like that. Okay, and then I'm going to make a chain of 3. 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to slip stitch into that exact same loop. So just making a slip stitch. Okay, so that is basically the sequence for the lavender. So I'm going into the next sort of loop, top loop. I'm going to call it the top loop, and this is the back loop. So I'm going to grab the top loop, and I'm going to make a single crochet, and then a chain 3, 1, 2, and 3, and then I'm going to slip stitch into that exact same loop to kind of join it all together. So that's now, I've done like 2 little flower buds, and I'm going to keep going with that same sequence until I have 8 of these like buds all the way down. Okay, so now I've done my 8 sort of bumps. I'm now going to tilt the work, so now I'm kind of moving to the other side of those loops. So I'm working in the opposite loops that we just was working in, and now I'm going to continue the sequence all the way across these loops. So what I'm doing is I'm doing 8 of those lavender bumps all the way across. So I'm grabbing my next loop, which was the opposite side, single crochet, chain 3, and then slip stitch into the same loop, into the next loop, single crochet, chain 3, and then slip stitch into the same loop. Once again, single crochet into the next loop, chain 3, and slip stitch into that same loop. So now I'm going to work all the way up. So I've got 3 loops now, and I'm going to continue until I get to my very last loop. Okay, so I've just done my last lavender bud, and now we're back at the top, and we want to kind of join these 2 sides together. So I'm basically just going into that first like single crochet that we made on this side. So I'm inserting my hook into that first single crochet right there, and then I'm making a slip stitch like that. That's just going to join it together, and then I'm just going to chain 1 and fasten off and pull that through like that. And now I'm going to show you how to make the green stem. So you're going to want to take your green yarn, and you're going to want to make a slip knot like that. And you're going to want to tilt your work into the direction that you normally work in. So because I'm left-handed, I'm going to be working from the top to the bottom. If you're right-handed, tilt your work this way and work from the top to the bottom that way. You're going to want to insert your hook into kind of the bottom loop of your lavender flower. You're going to push it through that bottom loop, and then you're also going to push it through the loop near it on the basket. So as you can see, I've got these kind of V's going all the way down. So I'm just going to push it through that V right underneath, so that your hook is now onto the inside of the basket. With your green slip knot, you're going to pull it through the basket. So pull your hook back through. Oh. Pull your hook back through the basket. So you've pulled the hook through, and then you pull the hook through that baby pink loop as well. Okay, you want to make sure that your working green yarn is on the inside of the basket. That's intentional. And if it's easier, you can push the basket inside out as well, so that it's kind of easier then when you're working with the working yarn. Okay, so this is what you should have, and then you have your working yarn on the inside of the basket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be making like 5 slip stitches. So I'm going to go into my next loop below the lavender flower. I'm going to insert my hook through the basket, so it's coming out through the other side, and then I'm going to yarn over, so I'm wrapping the yarn around the hook. I'm going to pull that yarn down back through where we just inserted the hook, so I'm pulling up a loop. Now you should have 2 loops on your hook, and then you're going to pull your first loop through the second to make that slip stitch. So just take your time, like that. Okay, and then I'm going to do that 4 more times. So I'm going into the next sort of V below it, inserting my hook into that basket, pushing it through to the other side, and then I'm going to yarn over and pull up a loop, and then I'm pulling the first loop through the second, like that. Going into the next V, inserting my hook, yarn over and pull through, 2 loops on the hook, and then pull the first through the second. So now I've done 3 slip stitches. Now I'm going to do my 4th, insert my hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, pull the first loop through the second. Now last one, just get in, insert my, and it doesn't have to be accurate, by the way. If you can't really see like a V, just insert your hook anywhere in that same straight line, because it actually doesn't matter at all. So insert your hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then pull the first loop through the second, like that. So now you've done 5 slip stitches. Now you can just cut the yarn. So cut the yarn and then pull the tail through the front, and then you can just tighten it. And then you can just weave these ends into the inside of the basket with your hook. You can just weave them in. So that is how you do your lavender flower, like that. So now I'm going to be doing those lavender flowers alternating at every leaf. So I'm going to skip this leaf, leave this one blank, and then I'm going to do a purple flower here with a stem underneath it, and then I'm going to skip this leaf, and then I'm going to do a pink one over here with the stem underneath it, and so on, and I'll be working all the way around. So I'm going to do that now, and then I'll come back and I'll show you the final result. And don't forget to weave in all of your ends when you are finished. So yeah, I'm going to do that now, and then I'll show you the final result. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and giving this video a thumbs up. And if you have any ideas of what you'd like me to make next, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I always look forward to hearing your guys' thoughts and ideas, so I'll be happy to make anything you want me to. So yeah, I will see you all in the next video, and I love you all.